Hello and welcome to Mission Impressionable. Darkest Dungeon. I actually saw this on a different YouTube channel and it looked interesting, so I picked it up and just kind of never got around to it like most things until now. I guess I'll start with like the things I really like about the game. I love the atmosphere. It has this very, I'm trying to think of the right word for it. Like, there's like this constant sense of dread, and I think the art style kind of emphasizes that too with how like dark everything looks. I'm not sure if that's the best way to describe it. I know there's a word out there and I can't think of it, and I'll probably think of it later, and then I'll be like, yeah. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So I love the atmosphere of the game, and the game has a lot of really cool mechanics. So, like, one mechanic is every character has unique quirks, and there's both good and bad quirks. So, like, ones that, improve their stats or whatever, and then there's ones, like, that'll, like, affect how they act. So, like, for example, I had a character who was a kleptomaniac, and I didn't really know how that would affect things until I was in a dungeon and I got into this hallway where there was like a sack on the floor that could be looted. But as soon as I entered that hallway and got up to that sack, he went up to it and just took everything. And he's like, this is mine now. So I didn't get any loot from that. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, it, actually affects the game that they have these negative traits. So that's really cool. I also like that the game doesn't overload you with information. It just kind of slowly introduces stuff as it becomes more relevant to you. On one hand, like, I really like this because sometimes, like, games like this will just be too much to take in all at once, and it'll leave you feeling overwhelmed, and you'll just step away from it because that's too much information. So I like that it does things kind of slow, but it also leaves you with some questions like, well, how do I deal with this thing? What do I do about that? And on that note, there's the stress mechanic. So essentially there's two kinds of damage that are going to be getting dealt to you. So, of course, your heroes have their HP, and then they also have a stress level. Their stress will just kind of go up as you're in a dungeon, because you're in a dungeon. And there's also certain attacks enemies will do that'll affect your stress level. So if your stress goes too high, the hero becomes afflicted and will suffer stat changes, and it'll affect them in different ways. And the stress will accumulate over time, do damage, and if it goes too high past the affliction, the hero's body gives out. Basically, they die. As far as I can assume, I didn't actually have anyone hit that point. But the only apparent tool early on for dealing with stress is when you're back in like your town area and you have them rest. You take them to the tavern or the church. So there doesn't seem to be a way to deal with it in dungeon. I'm not sure if that's completely true, though, because when the, little tutorial thing talking about Affliction popped up, it did mention, like, the Affliction will go away if you manage to get their stress down to 0 before exiting the dungeon. So there's gotta be a way. It just, like I said, it's not clear. It doesn't tell you everything right away. So both good and bad to, avoiding overloading the player with information. But the combat is pretty simple. It's turn-based. Each character has a set of abilities. The abilities have different ranges, and at first it's just kind of like, okay, well, this ability is lit up, I'll use this ability. But as you kind of look at them, it's easy enough to figure out what each thing does, though it doesn't actually explain it very well. Like, I pretty much figured out how abilities work just by, like, the context clues of, like, the abbreviations and stuff on them. Like, okay, this has this accuracy, does this kind of damage, will cause this status effect, etc. The other mechanic I really like about the game is the light mechanic. As you go, there's like a torch, and you have to use torches to keep the light up. If it gets too dark, the game will get harder. Everything becomes more difficult, and apparently it also gets you better loot. So it creates this balance of risk-reward of, well, do I want to let it get dark so that I have that potential for better loot, or do I want to keep everything lit up really brightly so that, you know, like I can get through the dungeon without dying? You know, as always with these, I didn't play it for long, you know, just doing the first impressions, but even in that first, like, actual dungeon run, once I got out of, like, the tutorial, I almost lost a hero. Like, the one that I was, like, most excited about, he seemed to be my strongest, and I was, like, giving him my extra gear and stuff, and trying to focus really on him, and he almost died. At first, I didn't actually know what happened. I was in a room, and, like, a little hunger thing popped up, which is how I found out about exactly how eating works, because before I had just kind of used my food, like, there's no way to tell if they're hungry, so maybe I just use the food and hope for the best, and so I used my food and, you know, got my party health back that way. And then later, like, a pop-up showed up, like, that they were hungry, but I didn't have any food left, so I had to take damage for the starvation. But I didn't notice the damage because, like, right after I clicked the food thing, like, help popped up talking about different things, and when I closed that, another one popped up. Once I got through 3 of these pop-up windows, I was like, wait, why is my guy dying? What just happened? Kind of was caught off guard by that. But it's cool that, like, you actually have to pay attention to your party's, like, well-being and not just their HP value. So on to kind of the stuff I didn't like, and then some minor just nitpicks, basically. So my first big nitpick was there was a moment where I was on the map to choose, like, the next dungeon to go to, but there was a voiceover, and I turned on subtitles because I do that with everything. And the subtitles were covering the area where you set up your party roster and, like, click to proceed. So I'm clicking around on the map, and, like, I didn't notice after the subtitles went away the party roster thing right away. So I'm just clicking around trying to figure out how to start the next mission, and eventually I did notice and, you know, set up my party and was like, oh, okay, that's how I do it. But, you know, like I said, minor nitpick. The other one is how it's a little harder to move forward in the game. Like, it's not very clear at first, but when you're moving between rooms, and you're in, like, a hallway section of the map, at the end, you have to click on a door on the background to, like, go into the next room. And it would be nice if you could just move to the right, like, all the way, instead of having to do that, because the first time I came up to the end of something, I was like, well, wait, where do I go? What do I do? And I was kind of clicking around, and eventually, like, I moved backwards and then back forward a little bit and then clicked on the door and it let me go in. I was like, oh, that, like, it wasn't really clear. Like, when I walk up to something lootable, it becomes highlighted, showing that I can interact with it. The doors don't. So I just thought it was like a background element, but it was actually like a grate or a gate or something back there. So, you know, minor nitpicks. The other one was when you're in combat, it'll, like, by default pull up the items screen, and, you know, having the items tab open's nice. You can, you know, use the items and stuff to heal yourself, to get rid of status ailments, but it doesn't default back to the map. I kept having this moment where, like, I'd clear a room and I'd be like, and I'd go to, like, walk to the right to continue forward, and I was like, right, I have to click the next room in the map. So that's, like, a super minor nitpick of just, like, me not paying attention, but at the same time, it would be nice if it, like, defaulted back to the map when you clear a room. Based on my first impressions, though, like, I generally like the game. Like, it has a lot of really cool mechanics, and I definitely want to look into it more, but it seems difficult. Like, it seems like the kind of game that will definitely kick you around and not pull any punches. So there's not a lot bad I can say about it based on my first impressions. Like, there was a little bit of that, unclear on what I was supposed to do, but I would chalk that up more to user error, like my own fault, than I would to it being the game's fault, really. So, I would say I recommend this game. As long as you don't mind turn-based combat and you like the concept of, like, the permadeath systems, because it really is essentially a roguelike, and the fact that, like, your heroes, if they die, they're dead. I guess it's not really a roguelike because you don't totally lose all your progress. Like, you're still going to be able to move on, you just have to do it with new heroes. So maybe comparing it to something like Final Fantasy Tactics wouldn't be bad, where it's like you want to keep your good party members alive and like do what you can to keep them around. But at the same time, it's hard to really judge this one based on the first impression. I definitely feel like I need to get further in, kind of look at more of the game to get a really good idea. But from what's there, what I can see, I like it. And I do wish a few things were a little more clear, but I think it's good as is. Like, I don't think the bits that are unclear are so unclear that it, detracts from the overall experience. The overall experience it's really cool. So, do check this game out if you like these kind of games. Obviously, if you don't like turn-based stuff, I know a few people like that, actually, you're not going to like it much. But, hopefully, looking at this, it looks somewhat interesting, because I do think it's something that, people should give a chance and check out. So yeah, I'll see you next week. I'm doing polls now on my Facebook page to kind of decide on, like, what to do next. Of course, the channel's small, haven't really gotten a lot of feedback on that end, but I do kind of have an idea on what I'm going to be doing next coming up. So if you're able to, do check out the Facebook. The link will be in the description, and find that post, or I might make a new one actually by the time this goes up. Just let me know on the list of what I put up there, what kind of sounds interesting, what has a cool title, or, if you want, look it up on Steam and be like, hey, I want to see what the gameplay for this is like. And I, of course, will get to everything eventually, but, just kind of get an idea of what I should do first. Have a great day. I'm gonna maybe play some more of this game once I get everything done here, because it's cool. I like it. I do like it.